one other reason why we kind of set up an initial kind of tracker up front. We might say track right away from the homepage to your lead page, to the checkout page, finally to the post-purchase page.
Hey podcast listener, you're about to discover insider tips, tricks, and secrets to making more sales and converting more prospects into customers with email marketing. For more information about the Email Marketing Podcast or the Autoresponder Guide, go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Hey, it's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy, and it's time for episode 95 of the McMethod Email Marketing Podcast, where you'll discover just plain old simple marketing fundamentals, which is all about email marketing. But ultimately, let's make some more sales, let's make some more money, let's get rich, wealthy, maybe even a little bit famous, and let's do it while automating the whole thing. So we can chill out on a beach, we can go to the park with our kids, we can go on a nice date with our partner, drink some wine, look at a sunset, walk along the beach. Point is, we want to live life on our own terms. So today, I'll be talking to Jakub Linowski. Now, Jakub also came to me via email, like a number of my other guests, and he's a web optimization, basically a conversion optimization expert. He has a sick-looking website, which you'll hear about in a second, and he's got some great skills in terms of how to increase your conversion rates. And I've mentioned this before, but something you'll learn in, when you get to testing and when you get to tracking everything that you're doing in your business, you'll realize that being successful and having that massive business, or maybe just that massive cash flow, depends on what your vision is mostly just a matter of testing, tweaking forever, right? This is the mindset that you got to have, and this is how I think every successful person lives their life. As people like to say, failure doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is feedback. So you set a goal, I'm going to make $1 million, and you start off, and a week later you run into it. You have a challenge. You're like, oh man, the bank won't loan you some money, or something like that. And some people are like, oh, you failed. Or maybe you even started a business. 6 months later, you went bankrupt. And maybe you're like, well, failed. Well, you could look at it like that, or you could say, hey, I just ran a split test. I just did a test in my life, didn't work. So let's run it again. Let's run that test again. Run that scenario again. Let's start another business, do it slightly differently, tweak a variable, and see if we go bankrupt a second time. Because if we change something, if we change what we're doing, what went wrong, then we're not going to go bankrupt a second time. Okay, so this is the sort of the tracking, conversion, split testing mindset that is so fundamental to building your business. And also, I reckon, man, it's just fundamental to building a life, growing your life, in that there's always going to be mistakes, always challenges, always things going wrong, and people that get pissed off at you and don't like. That's always going to happen. The point is, what do you do about it? Do you run back to your little hideout in the jungle somewhere and kind of shake in your boots and just cry yourself to sleep, or do you get up, you dust yourself off, and you go, all right, what do I need to do differently this time to make it work? Because this is a little bit of a rant here, but to bring this back to building your website and building your business and building your sales. Try a sales funnel. You go write some emails like, oh man, I'm terrible at writing emails, but hey, try it again. See if you can change a few things. Maybe hire a different writer. Maybe just hire a better copywriter. Try it again. See if you get better results. Track the results. Do it again and again and again. And if you improve 10% each time after a year, after 10 times, you don't have a 100% increase. You've got, I think, 111, 112. It's a compounded increase. And as Einstein says, compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe. So that's what we're talking about today. Compound interest, the most powerful force of the universe, with Jakub Linowski on, which is really conversion optimization, how to run some tests on your site, how to boost it, get more conversions, and just get more sales. Cool, yeah? Now, to get the show notes for this episode of the Email Marketing Podcast, go to themcmethod.com/95. Now, this week's McMaster's Insight of the Week, true to form with this week's topic, is go and sign up to a service like Mixpanel. Now, Mixpanel is, I think it's meant to be used for apps, software apps. You can track which pages people go on and where they're, going throughout the site and things like that. But what I've been using Mixpanel for is they have a feature called funnels, where you can set up and say, here's page 1, here's page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. And it will then break down, it will show you the conversion rate from step to step to step to step. And then you can set up a second funnel and test that. And then you can see which one performs best. Scrap the loser, keep the winner. Now, my favorite part about Mixpanel, and you can do this with a lot of tracking things. So this is not just for Mixpanel, but this is what I use Mixpanel for. Is you can add these variables in your URL. So you could say, mysite.com /ID equals Facebook, right? And you use that link on your Facebook ad, and anyone who clicks that link and ends up on that funnel is going to show up in Mixpanel as, all right, you had one visitor from your funnel variable, okay, from ID equals funnel. And you can add as many variables as you want, and they'll all show up in Mixpanel. So I was going on Facebook, and this is where I was going and doing, say, a campaign targeting to, 30 to 55-year-olds. All right, and then I could put that in the URL, track it, look at how 30 to 55-year-olds respond in the funnel. Then I could do the same thing for 55 to 65-year-olds. Then I could do the same thing for people targeting, say, Ryan Dice versus Perry Marshall, and see which one of those guys are more likely to buy stuff, and on and on and on and on. And when you can track things down to a T like this, you can find out exactly who the hell's buying your stuff, exactly who is, and get rid of the people who aren't, and just spend way more money on advertising to the people who buy your stuff. And then you grow your business. Boom. So that's McMaster's Inside the Week. McMaster's is it's a private community that I have. There's a forum, there's a bunch of training products, all about, it's mainly about email marketing, but there's also stuff in there on how to write a great sales page, how to write stories that sell, how to do it, how I built, there's a case study in there on the Facebook campaign that I ran recently, the one that I just mentioned. Basically a bunch of stuff in there, some webinars, there's a forum that I'm in every day, and you can learn more about that at themcmethod.com. In the top menu bar, there is a link to members. Just click that, you can learn more about it there. And I'll see you on the inside. Now, last but not least is reviews. If you want to make my day, put a smile on my face, make the sun shine, the rain go away, leave me a review. Leave me a review. So head over to iTunes, search for the Method Email Marketing Podcast, and leave me a review. Chuck in however many stars you think it's worth. Tell me what you think about the show, and I will read it out, and I'll even buy you a beer when I run into you eventually in the US, and Thailand, and China, who knows where. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into this interview with Mr. Jakub Linowski. It's John McIntyre here, the autoresponder guy. I'm here with Jakub Linowski. Now, Jakub actually hit me up via email a while back to talk about the podcast. He's an active listener, and he'd been enjoying it. And he mentioned some of the stuff that he was working on, which was user interface design and some conversion optimization. And I had some great insights to share, so I thought, why not get him on the podcast and make a podcast out of it, obviously. So he's got a site called Good UI. It's goodui.org. It's a content piece with a whole bunch of ideas around how to create a good user interface. And then he's also at linowski.ca. It's linowski.ca, where they do conversion optimization. They got a whole bunch of cool stuff there too. So today we're going to talk about how to run your first optimization test, and it's also going to be good for people who have already been testing, because I think you're going to get some good ideas about what to test, even if you've been doing it for a while. So we'll get into that in just a minute. Jakub, how you going, man?
Thanks, John. Hey, how's it going? Good.
Pretty good, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so before we get into the content or the details, can you give the listener just a little bit more of a background on who you are and what you do?
Sure. So we're running a conversion optimization company, and we've been running test, learning the test as of last year, and before that, doing a bunch of UI design, concepting, and there was a time where probably a year and a half ago where we decided to basically focus mostly on measurable results that can drive the design decisions. So hence conversion optimization.
Right. The cool thing here is that this podcast has traditionally been an email marketing podcast, but if anyone's been listening to this for a while, they know it's we talk about traffic and sales funnels and split testing, a whole bunch of different stuff. And what I like to do actually is in this case, when it comes to email marketing, obviously it pays to test things, but this is just business and direct response marketing 101 that you have to test. And anyone who's been doing this for any amount of time knows that testing is really where the magic happens. You don't get things right the first time. You do if you're lucky, but even the best guys in the world, they test. Some of the biggest companies, direct response companies that do $600-700 million a year, they're testing everything. So they're always trying to optimize. So before we get into the nitty gritty, tell me why it's important. Why is running optimization testing? Why is optimizing for conversions important in your words?
So I think there's a time whenever designing a UI, a landing page, a lead page, any kind of front end UI piece, sometimes there are points where you become uncertain, right? And you hit this phase where you're feeling like, oh, it could be like this way or it could be something else. And I think those are golden moments where you can you just have to capture those and just make a note, and you don't have to be sure. You don't have to make a decision based on that. You just kind of have to set that apart, and I think those are great candidates to explore using data. Of course, there's other moments where you might be just like, there's some design elements that are just missing that are dead obvious, such as maybe there's like no benefit or no headline or no button or something like that. So I mean, those things, those moments, I think it's good to separate like the high confidence stuff from those uncertainties.
Right. One thing that took me a while to get, I only got this recently when earlier this year I ran a campaign with some Facebook advertising. And I guess I learned via experience that you've really got to track everything and optimize for conversions. Well, you start off and whatever your rate is to begin with, you start with that and then you optimize. You run a split test on each step in that sales funnel, and you say you bump it, each step by 10%, and you've got 4 steps. Well, your increase isn't 40%. It's really, I think that'd be 44 or 45%. So that you've got the compound effect or compound interest. So it's, and that's where it gets really powerful. And this to me is why I get so excited about it, because I'm not really I'm kind of like fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. Like I get on here, I don't plan these podcasts too much because I like to kind of I generally, it's just personality-wise, I just like to wing it. So I'm not usually a numbers guy. But when I got to see the numbers and how by running these simple tests, which don't even have to take that long to set up, just changing a few words or changing a button or slightly tweaking an offer, or different stuff like that, or just the price, you can totally change the results or the ROI on a sales funnel. And that's what gets me so pumped up about it.
So I think so you're touching upon an interesting point here. Like so there's some tests which can be done very quickly, and you can wing it, and you can come up with little changes, potentially changes that have a big effect. Let's say headlines. But then there's other types of redesign, like larger variations, right? You can completely rethink a whole page and maybe have multiple sections which have to be readjusted and so forth. So I think there's a balance between how large your variations are, like how far away are they from the control.
Right. Because one thing I've noticed is that one of the first things, in my experience, worth testing is the offer and the price. I mean, the offer, you might have to tweak the actual product, and that can take a bit of time. But the price side of things, usually all you have to do is drop in a new PayPal link and change the text on the page that says the price. So there's tests like that are really fast. But then like what you're talking about is maybe you want to test an entire new user interface and see how that impacts conversions.
So I think that touches upon the effect. So typically, I think we found that the smaller changes, of course, like the single variable changes, I think they're great and awesome for identifying like the cause and effect. Of course, then if you change the headline, then you know that it's the headline that caused the 5, 10, 20% lift, right? So that's amazing. You can then reuse that on other pages, maybe other material, maybe in emails. But sometimes we find that not every site has the traffic, right? To reach significance, right? Because that's an important element as well. Like, if you're basing your decision on 5 out of 100 conversions versus 12 or 8 out of another 100 conversions for another variation, right? Then that's not really significant. So that there's a danger there, right? So that's for first timers, maybe one piece of advice. Like, you really need to get your significance levels in check, and I think there's tools out there that can help people with that. But that's important.
This is the cool thing. So what you brought up here is this issue of statistical significance, which is where you can run a test, and if you only get 5, you might run a split test with any sort of split testing software, and you get a whole bunch of traffic through it, and you split test a headline, and maybe you get 4 conversions on one of them and 7 conversions on the other, and you're like, whoa, one of the variations almost doubles the conversions, and it's like, well, hold on. You don't have enough data yet. If you've only got 7 conversions, you don't know anything, because that can still swing. There's sort of like a random variation. You don't know that quick. So I know that there's some pretty complex formulas, or there is a complex formula that allows you to kind of figure out what statistically significant is. But, if you're I've used Visual Website Optimizer, or VWO, I think it's now called. I'm sure the other ones do it as well, but they'll actually tell you if it's statistically significant or not.
Yeah, we use V. I always get this screwed up here. VWO. We also use that as a primary tool. Something to know about those tools. Sometimes they do sugarcoat the results a little bit, but there's other tools out there that also can. I think it's good start to use in the beginning. There are some also a little bit more conservative tools out there, But yeah, that's definitely one thing to keep in mind.
Right. So tell me about like if I was say I've got a website, I've got a basic sales funnel set up. I might even have an autoresponder, right? I've basically got some traffic. I've got a couple different conversion pages that require conversions, and I want to run my first test. So let's say I go sign up to Visual Website Optimizer, VWO.com is where it is now. Let's say I sign up to that, and all right, I'm ready to run my first test. What do you suggest?
So typically, one thing we do upfront is, especially when we're dealing with a new project and or a new client, applies to any kind of new page as well. Try to gauge the current traffic and the current conversion rate, right? So I mean, if you're getting 100 unique visits every month, then that's a sign. That's basically a bit of planning. Like if you have that starts giving you a bit of an idea how long you'll need to test for, as well as how many variations you can have. So typically on using VWO, we'd run even an A-test just to get that launched if we don't have any proper metrics up front. So we'd almost set up a tracker just to understand how much traffic there is and what the current conversion is. Okay, and then with that, we start planning. Like, okay, if it's a low traffic site, we focus mostly on we try to have one variation, so a traditional A/B test.
Yep.
Typically, we avoid those smaller tests in those cases. So we'll focus more on the bigger changes, such as maybe there's like better sales copy, maybe there's a better headline, maybe there's some social proof, maybe anchoring, and so on. Maybe more visible call to action if it's a long page, maybe repeated calls to action, and so forth, right?
Right. Okay, so you're talking about like you can test variables that I think is one. Basically, we're talking about variables that scream and variables that whisper. So some things you go test the price, you test the offer, you test the headline, you test the opening couple sentences, or you test a major user interface shift. A couple of those like big changes. Then you're going to run the test, and you're probably going to see a big difference. You might see like a 20, 30, 50, 100% change in conversions. Whereas if you test, say, the color of the button, that's not always going to make that big of a difference. So when you have a low traffic site, you don't really have the flexibility to test a whole bunch of stuff just because every test costs time. So you've got to really optimize for the biggest wins.
I think so, yeah. I mean, what we're going to result in, if you're doing a single change and it's going to be, let's say, a 10% increase, that test might require on a low traffic site maybe 6 months, a year or so. If however you're doing, let's say, you're getting to a 30-40% lift, that might cut your required duration to, let's say, a month or two. Again, just using some example numbers here.
Right. One thing, I mean, like if you run into a client and they have low traffic, do you ever suggest that before they go, maybe set up the conversion test, because that's not going to take too long. You figure out something to test, a variable that screams, go and test it or set the test up. Because once you set it up, it's running. You just let the data run and you go and do your thing. Now after that, obviously the more traffic you can get, the faster you're going to improve. And this is where paid traffic gets really exciting, is because if you're not tracking anything and you're not testing anything, well, you're not really going to be able to, you got to spend money on Facebook ads or AdWords. You're not going to know whether you're making money, number one, and even if you were, like maybe you might be losing money, but it would only require a few simple tests and then you'd be making money. So it's kind of like you get in this position where once you set the test up, go and buy some traffic, right? Because if you buy more traffic, you get more leads through. Maybe you can run a test every month instead of every 6 months. And that means you get a compound interest over every month for 6 months instead of once every 6 months. So, and that might not sound like much because your business might not change much in that 6 months, whichever way you do it. But over a few years, these small tweaks, these small changes in timelines make a massive difference in the way that business is going to grow.
Definitely. So throwing traffic at a test is definitely a good way to reach significance faster. If of course that traffic matches your other traffic that's kind of more natural, more organic, or beyond the duration of the test, right?
Right. Give me like what would be like the top. If I was a client and I wanted to test something on my website right now, if you can go to, I don't know if you could go to the McMethod.com, and let's see, I'm curious to see what you'd say here, because this will give us a couple interesting ideas. Go to the McMethod.com, and if you give me 3 things just off the top of your head, I've tested a whole bunch of stuff on this site, but what would you test?
Oh man, you caught me off guard here. Okay, now I have to think here.
It's good making these. When you make something concrete like this, it's you get some interesting insights out of it.
So I think this. I'll try to come up with something, but I think this raises an interesting point. Is like, sure, there are some things we can pull out of a bucket. Let's say we have a bunch of 50 plus tips on goodui.org that we can pull and sometimes use, and those are kind of the generic rules of thumb, or so to say, right?
Yeah.
But you can also dig deeper. You can also supplement that with proper user research and listening to customers and feeling their pain points. And so John, I might ask you like, okay, so what are the first one or two questions they ask you when they speak to you about like doing consulting with you, right? What are they worried about? And that's another, of course, like good way to figure out what's wrong with this page, right? If there's anything wrong with it, right? So it's a balance of picking stuff from the past, from experience, as well as.
I like that idea. So it's not just about, you can't just look at a page really and go, all right, test this. You really have to go back to. I mean, this is when I teach people inside McMaster's how to write an order response or how to write a sales letter. Yeah, you can just come off the bat and say, well, you should do this, you should use this formula, and you should write bullets like this and use this headline template. But you've really got to go back to square one and think, well, hang on, go and talk to your customers, go and talk to your prospects, get them on the phone and find out what do they really want to know about before they purchase. Because that's where you're going to get the insights that are going to drive the conversions in the long run.
Exactly. So if you're asking about like ideas off the top of my head, I'm assuming, is that what you're curious about?
I'm curious. What ideas off the top of your head would you come up with?
Okay, so maybe some social proof around the email sign-up list. Maybe how many people have signed up. Maybe that's worthy of a little experiment. I'm not sure how much effect that would be. Maybe I'll guess. If anything, maybe 5% plus or minus, maybe very close to the newsletter sign up. Maybe something about lowering commitments. There's like you can basically can unsubscribe at any time if you choose to leave. What to make money every time you send an email. Headlines, warning, this website will show you how to. That's interesting. So using a pretty direct way of getting someone's attention here at the top. Maybe gradual engagement as well. Let's say there's daily email tips. Maybe there's a way to pick and choose out of 2 or 3 email types. Yeah. Maybe there's like email types that people could segment themselves a little bit into, and a choice of tips on email marketing, tips on conversion optimization, tips on copywriting, or something like that. Sometimes segmentate. Yes, this is kind of gradual engagement, helps people to make that first decision and kind of flow into the next action, which is the email, of course, sign up. That's something we found as well. Benefits. I wonder. I mean, I haven't really got the chance to fully read and analyze this whole page. So you're going into benefits. I think that's great. Trying to then you'll discover X, Y, Z. Yeah. Is this what you're looking for?
Yeah. It's interesting because what I'm really looking for is an insight into how you think. Right. So it's not the specific stuff. I'm getting some ideas here that I'll go and test this stuff. But more importantly for the listener, it's interesting. Like I find what I get most out of with doing this podcast when I meet people at conferences and things, it's always fascinating to look inside someone's brain and see how they think. So that's really what I'm interested in here. I think the main thing when I look at we talk about when I'm listening to you talk about how to find pick stuff to optimize, it's things like it all comes back to this idea of thinking what's stopping someone from signing up. So it's like, well, someone's going to go to this site, and obviously it's clear, it's fairly straightforward. It's a one-column layout. So I noticed you mentioned that on your site. So it's fairly easy to figure out what's going on the site. But obviously, you're right. There is no. So one reason some people might not be signing up is where they can put their email address in. There's nothing in there about how many people have signed up to that list. So maybe that's a reason why some people aren't signing up. And then I like that idea of thinking, well, instead of thinking, well, what can we test or that sort of thing, ask the question of why aren't people buying or why aren't people signing up? Why aren't people moving to the next step? And then make a list, and then you can even ask them why haven't you signed up yet? I've noticed one thing I've noticed with McMaster's, that's the community that I have. You pay a monthly fee for access to training and a forum and things like that. One thing I've noticed is some people really don't like the idea of paying a monthly subscription, and I think the challenge with that, it's funny because you can cancel any time. But maybe I haven't been properly clear about that on the sales page and on the checkout page. So what's happening is someone's going there, oh, it's a monthly fee. Oh, that means I'm probably going to sign up for like 6 months or something, and they're going to be locked into some contract. So then it's like if all I have to do is add cancel anytime somewhere near the buy now button, and then also on the checkout page, and the conversions are going to go up. And the point here isn't that someone listening to this can walk away and go, oh, I'm going to add that same thing to my sales page, my order from cancel anytime. the challenge is thinking, well, no, that's not the secret. The secret is really getting inside your prospects, getting inside your visitor's head, and really asking yourself, why aren't they taking the next step?
Right, and when you run a product, when you have a service or info product, in our case, I mean, we're running into the same issue. We're selling some of our insights in the form of A/B tests that we run ourselves, and so we share that as part of Good UI/Data Stories. Here's a little plug. But we're running into the same issue. I mean, you listen. I mean, when you deal with customers, you hear their emails, their frustrations, their questions. So over time, I mean, opening up your ears to those things, though, I think those are great candidates for whether for tests or for just implementation. And we have the exact same thing. There's a subscription model, and we hear people saying, just want to. I'm not sure about the subscription. Like maybe that's kind of too committal. So maybe one option for that would be to test would be something like purchase just 1 month at this one fixed fee or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And so we also talked about, you mentioned what pages should people be testing? If they're looking at their site and they don't want to set up 5 tests, they just want to set up 1 test. Where's the best place for them to run a test to begin?
Right, so I think the page idea corresponds very much so with also a very primary question up front is also the metric. What's the key metric, right? I mean, here right now you gave me this page and like pretty much assumed very, very quickly that it's the newsletter sign up that matters to you. But I think it's in any test, any business, I think it's important to identify that key primary goal, right? So let's say it's purchases of McMaster. I don't know of the mastermind. With that, I think you identify the goal. Like how do you track that? It's a page visit, let's say, to a post purchase page, right? That's actually a purchase after the checkout page. So working backwards, I think from that, you start identifying like where are the pain points, where are the where the problem areas. And sometimes it's not just one page, it could be a funnel. And one other reason why we kind of set up an initial kind of tracker up front, we might like say track right away from the home page to your lead page, to the checkout page, finally to the post-purchase page. And then just like looking at some of the kind of data, you can get a bit of a sense of where those problem areas might originate. Yep. So that's one way to identify. Another way, I guess, to identify would be like by just looking at traffic. Like, what are your top visited pages? I mean,
yeah. Okay, I like it, man. You have this very like deep analytical way of diving into this, and you know, I'm more of the kind of let's just pick something and go for it. But it's always interesting. I got a friend here in Thailand. He's more of the I'm kind of like a sledgehammer. I just like to get in and get dirty. But there's also like the alternate or the other side of the spectrum is someone who comes in and goes really like a scalpel. Or like a surgeon's knife and kind of go in and really try and isolate the biggest wins. It sounds like that's sort of where your head's at. You like to really dive in and understand what's going on here.
Well, John, we're learning. I mean, as I mentioned, it's just been a year, so some of our tests are actually like sledgehammers, right? and you know, we actually have like this testing strategy called like the shotgun approach, or we also sometimes laugh. It's like, okay, it's throw it against the wall and hope it sticks approach, where we again typically on lower traffic sites we'll just come up with 3 as diverse variations as possible, right? And just try stuff out and then look what happens and see if like which one performs better, and then and then work like again grouping so many changes to a particular variations won't necessarily give us a concrete insight as to why it's performing better, but at least it will set the new baseline for, let's say, a plus 40% lift, and then we can work our way from that with a series of smaller tests.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah. Okay. And then what sort of, I mean, you mentioned metrics a minute ago. Like, you know, when I think about testing, I'm just going to be measuring the conversion rate. Is there more to it than that? Is there more metrics that I should be looking at than conversions?
Definitely. So I mentioned this idea of primary metric, and that alleviates the pain of later on when you have like, let's say, multiple. Let's say you're tracking clicks. Let's say you're tracking what's it called? Form submits. Maybe you're tracking another page visit in your funnel, like on a between the landing page and the checkout, and then post checkout, and maybe the homepage. Then let's say all of a sudden you have like 5 metrics in your test, and then you're thinking, okay, what's the most important one? And so to avoid making that decision during the test, so the first thing was like to choose what's really important up front, and then in terms of multiple metrics, I think it's always good to have those metrics tracking across the funnel, because then they can give you a bit of a sense of, let's say you have a lead page or landing page which warms up the traffic, and you have clicks there, right? So that's like your first interaction. Maybe lots of people are clicking on the clicks, but maybe there's some sort of form validation that's prohibiting them from going forward. Maybe they're getting stuck there. Maybe they don't know to enter into a field. Yeah. And let's say that plus 30 lift is not carrying over to the next page, which only is showing like plus 5% lift. Right? Then you start seeing, if there's such a high conversion rate here up front, but not necessarily carries over further down the road, then you have something to work with. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we're talking about like breaking it down into as granular as possible. So you can say like, all right, so someone viewed the page, then someone clicked the link, then someone, you could even track down to the events based on what forms someone filled out. Forms. You could see maybe they get stuck on, maybe you can move the credit card number down to the end of the form, and that increases overall conversions, because then people don't get stuck halfway down going and fishing away for their credit card. But if they fill out the entire form first, then they're committed and they're like, they're not consciously thinking about it. But by that point, they've filled out the entire form, so they might as well grab their credit card and fill out the rest. Whereas you have the credit card at the top, it might have a different feeling. So we're talking about looking at things in a really granular way.
Right, breaking down the funnel.
Yeah, okay.
So that's another good practice, I think. Tracking page visits, I think, is also good, as opposed to just clicks. Again, for that same very reason. Anything that's kind of deeper in the funnel, I think, is also good.
Okay. And you mentioned some best practices. What sort of best practices have you got? Have you got like 5 best practices or a list there?
So best practice for just implementation or for testing?
For testing.
Sure, yeah. So I think I started like mentioning a little bit about some of kind of those, like having primary goals, having breaking down the funnel, estimating up front, I think is also good, as I kind of mentioned earlier on. So getting a bit of a sense of what your traffic's like, because again, that helps you to plan the test. Yeah. Tracking page visits. Another, I think, best practice would be typically you can reach faster and more significant results when you have less variations. So focusing on more traditional A/B tests, that basically gives you a faster result. Okay. And so I think those are kind of the key.
And you got a whole list of these at goodui.org/better-data, right?
You found it, yes. So on goodui.org/better-data, we explore some of kind of our learnings as well, and that's all free content there for A/B testing best practices. And I mentioned some of those. Some of those get a little bit technical, and some are more high level.
Okay, well let's wrap it up here. I mean, we're right on time here. So where are these places? You mentioned we got goodui.org/better-data. You've got goodui.org/data stories, which is looks like it's a subscription newsletter with ideas on what tests to run.
Yeah. So if goodui.org is like this periodic element table of just things to try, we purposefully use the word try and an X idea, because those are like kind of hypotheses. It's like almost like a checklist for things to do to raise conversions. And goodui.org/data stories is pretty much we take those ideas and we group them into variations, and we test them out. We try to figure out which ones work, which ones don't. So when we run tests, we basically once a month we share our best test results in that publication.
Okay, and you've also got Linowski.ca.
That's the company. That's the official company name, and that's where we do our consulting.
Okay. So if someone wanted to talk to you more, get in touch, maybe even hire you to do some conversion optimization, the best place for them to go would be Linowski.ca, right?
That sounds like a good start.
Okay. Great. All right, Jake, mate, this has been really good. Really appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. If you want to discover more insider tips, tricks, and secrets about driving sales with email marketing, sign up for daily email tips from the autoresponder guy. Go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Sign up, confirm your email address, and I'll send you daily emails on how to improve your email marketing and make more sales via email. You'll find out why open rates don't matter, and the 7-letter word that underlies all effective marketing, and much more.